These pictures coming out of Damascus that we can show you now, they're kind of timeless, aren't they? I mean, the dictator falls, his personal treasure is looted instantly. In this case, luxury cars, Louis Vuitton handbags, air conditioners. If it's, even if it's nailed down, it's looted. When they fall, these tyrants fall hard and fast, don't they?
Yeah, they do, and this one was very sudden, although the civil war had been going for 13 years, but it was quick at the end. It seemed to accelerate, and you see how they've lived a life of luxury, when 90% of Syrians are living in poverty. 12 million people have been displaced. I think 6 million have left the country as refugees. 6 million have been forced to flee their homes inside. 300,000 people have been killed. 100,000 people have been disappeared. Phenomenal statistics, because the country has been riven. I went to Damascus just 6 months before the civil war erupted. It was peaceful protests from people complaining about their standard of living. Assad, brutal like his father, decided to try and crush them, and it backfired enormously on him. But he's wrecked his country. But the worry is now, you see the statues come down, you see everybody cheering and jubilant that you've lost a dictator, but what is to come next? Who is to come next? The only thing you could say in Assad's favour back in 2011 was he was a secularist. Now, it looks like the opposition...
He defended the minorities, like the Christians.
They're Islamist. So you've got to worry, are you going to swap one tyrant for another? Yeah, and the main rebel leader, this HTS group, has its roots in IS, the Islamic State, which is one of the most medieval cults we've ever seen in this country. And they say they've moved on and modernised, but it is a worry what comes next. Think about think about Libya when Gaddafi was toppled.
And Iraq.
Basket cases ever since.
Lawless,
civil war. What would you be thinking this morning if you were a woman living in Syria? Because you talk about this being an Islamic extreme group, and we know the way that they treat women. We see what's coming out of Afghanistan now. Women not even allowed to speak in public. I'd be very concerned if I was a woman in Syria.
You would. Well, everyone will be concerned about a potential breakdown in law and order. All public services will cease. Do you have running water when you turn on the tap? Can you flush your toilet? Is there electricity? What's happened to basic health services? You'd be worrying about all that. But if you're a woman, yes, you'd be... Which brand of Islamism will you get? Will you get a relatively liberal brand, or will you have more oppressive? And presumably, the rebel alliance is full of factions. The worry is they then start fighting each other to see who comes out as dominant.
But is this going to tip the whole balance in the Middle East on end? Because we've seen what's happening in Gaza. Is Iran going to be next? Because Iran's backed up Assad. They're riven with difficulties because of the conflict with Israel. And look, we do want to see the mullahs go from Iran, but the whole of the Middle East now, I think, is a tinderbox.
I also want to just show our viewers the remarkable pictures from Sednaya prison, which is a kind of hellhole. It's known as the human slaughterhouse. And the Red Prison, but rebels went in and freed those people imprisoned there, including, remarkably, children. It was a little toddler who, I mean, we've blurred the identity, but the little toddler just sort of making their way out of a place where we know people have been tortured and executed. It's estimated that 30,000 detainees either executed or died as a result of torture, lack of medical care or starvation. What an absolutely hellish place. And women and children held there as well.
They had a crematorium built to dispose of the bodies of those they killed. No, this was a brutal regime.
Medieval.
There's
medieval.
Real reason to celebrate its end, but genuine concern now about what
this man was a doctor.
Next.
This man was working as a doctor, an eye doctor in London for a number of years until his father died, and then he went back and inherited, in a tyranny, inherited the crown, as it were. But he was a doctor, presumably taking the Hippocratic Oath, and was one of the most brutal tyrants. What do we think this means for us in this country? What should we be concerned about?
Well, one issue will be, I imagine there'll be another huge... more migrants fleeing Syria. Where are they going to come? Are they going to come to Britain? Are some Syrians here going to go back? But there will be, I think, there'll be a massive impact on migration, and I think this is going to continue for years and years.
If the best happens and a very oppressive, brutal dictator is replaced with a less oppressive regime, some people will go home. Most of the migrants are in Turkey and Lebanon. They're in neighbouring countries. They're not in Europe.
No.
And are those in Europe? Some will want to go. Some people who've been human rights campaigners, Syrian in Britain, say they want to go home now. They will. Others who'll be here will think, well, we've made our lives here. Run businesses, have jobs, work, families coming up. They want to go. But no, I think there's another wave of refugees if there is one civil war is replaced by another civil war.
What does that mean for the domestic political situation here? Because there is a new poll out today from a polling organisation that I wasn't familiar with, but it's called Find Out Now, and it has put Reform UK 1 point ahead of the Labour Party for the first time, 24%, 1 point above Labour on 23%. Good news, though, for Kemi Badenoch's Conservative Party. She's been criticised a lot for being rather low-key at the moment, but they've come out higher than both at 26%. Commenting on the poll, the chairman of Reform UK, Zia Youssef, says Reform has all the momentum in British politics.
It does feel like that.
Are Labour nervous, do you think?
Yes, they are, because Reform are in second place in nearly 93 for 94 seats. Traditional Labour constituencies, migration is going to be a massive issue. I don't think this government's got a clue, hasn't got any answers whatsoever, and Reform are going to keep banging on about migration. I think it's a big issue for them. We've got county council elections next year. I think they're going to do very, very well. Labour MPs are very nervous.
We have very relatively few Syrian refugees compared to other countries in ours, so some sense of perspective on that. I don't know about this polling organisation. I don't know its methodology. Other polls show other things, but at the moment, it's got to be said, Labour's in the doldrums. The Conservatives are kind of bumping along, and Reform and Farage have got an uptick.
Well, what about Farage? I mean, he's clearly running with the tide. He's got the backing from Washington. He's got millions of dollars on offer from Musk. To go to feed into Reform. I mean, we
don't know that.
Well, it's been reported. It's been widely reported.
Possibility that Elon Musk may give.
I've always thought it was an error. Labour allowed this, that you can have a company in the UK. You can be somebody who's not British. You can have a company in the UK and you can donate to political parties. I think all donations accepted by political parties should be only from British citizens.
Well, he'll do it to a British company.
No, but that's it. I think it's a loophole that should be closed. Yeah. Otherwise, you sell your democracy and your future to somebody like Elon Musk, who has a beef. I mean, it's a ludicrous system because he could do it through X, Twitter,
well, the question I was leading to, donations set aside...
It should be unlawful, should not be allowed.
Is there a possibility that one of the future prime ministers of this country is going to be Nigel Farage?
I don't think anybody's listening to the Conservative Party. I think they're ahead because Labour are so bad. In the same way Labour won the election because the Tories were so useless. That's why Labour won the election. The Tories lost it. I don't think anybody's listening to the Tories at the moment, and I think Farage has got momentum, and I think I can see a position where they could even be ahead in the polls of both parties.
But we're a long way off that, but you can never say it's impossible.
Exactly.
Well, I'll tell you someone who's listening to the Conservatives, and that is the Vice President of America, the Vice President-elect, of course, J.D. Vance. Because Kemi Badenoch's been to Washington, D.C., and there is a photograph of them together where they look very close. And J.D. Vance says... Shall we see the photograph? J.D. Vance said, great to see the leader of the UK Conservatives, Kemi Badenoch, during her trip to the US. We discussed many topics, but I was unable to persuade her that coffee is much better than tea. You'll just have to imagine the picture of them together.
Well, I think that's part of the problem with Kemi Badenoch. Where is she?
Oh no! Even our director can't find the picture.
Yeah, but J.D. Vance he'll meet anybody and shake their hands and say how wonderful they are. That's the job, and of course she's got to try and establish herself in Britain. Never mind in this States. But if she goes over the States, I suppose we're talking about her now in Britain. Because when you were off last week, Nadine Dorries was here, former Tory MP and cabinet minister, who admittedly voted for or wanted Robert Jenrick, Badenoch's rival, but nevertheless, she did just say, where is she? Because she's failed to cut through. Now, it's a very hard job when you're in opposition, particularly in the early days.
Particularly when you've only got 121 MPs.
I'll tell you who has joined Reform. Suella Braverman's husband.
Yeah.
Former Home Secretary Suella Braverman,
Well, it's a tease, isn't it? Does she go next?
Will she be next? Yeah.
Yeah, because
she's a target.
She is. She didn't run for the leadership. She's very hardline on immigration, as are Reform, and she would be a big coup for them.
Right.
But I think we won't see it yet.
But you look at the people who are going from the Tories to Reform, they're Tories. They're not going from Labour. There'll be some Labour people in the past. If they're aiming for Labour voters, well, it's trying to do it with a rebadged, souped-up Conservative Party. That's what they're doing. Tim Montgomery, the Conservative thing, Andrea Jenkins, who was a Tory MP, briefly a minister. They're all Tories. Farage was a Tory. He was a big Thatcherite, still is. Richard Tice was a Tory.
So your point is...
Lee Anderson's somewhat different, the MP, because he was Labour, then he went to the Tories, then he went to Reform. But it's a right-wing party. It's a right-wing Thatcherite Tory party. So if they're going for Labour voters, they'll try and hide that in some way.
But don't you get the overall impression that politically in this country the weather's changing?
Yeah.
It's been static for so long. It's been stuck for so long. And it does feel as if there are tectonic plates.
Well, and I think it's never been so fluid, because if you consider the Tories had that huge majority with Boris Johnson, 80-seat majority in 2019, 5 years later, Labour win with the biggest ever... The Tories' worst ever defeat in their history. It's changed, and it can change again.
2017, which is, 7 years ago, Labour and the Tories between them got 84% of the vote. The last election, Labour and the Tories between them got under 60% of the vote. We've basically got a two-party electoral system, but it's breaking up.
It is.
Because people are atomising.
We must...
I was going to say, while Kemi Badenoch was meeting J.D. Vance, Prince William was meeting Trump.
Yeah.
And this looks like the alliance that might help us over the next few years. Trump seems... I mean, we know that Donald Trump, President-elect, absolutely loves the royal family.
Yeah.
So this, does it do great things for us and the royal family, or does actually this do great things for Donald Trump? Who does this benefit?
I think both, and I think it's really important. This is what the monarchy is about, soft power. It's what they do so well. They're enablers, look, Kevin can't stand Trump. Of course he can't. Trump is going to be...
He's not that keen on the royal family either.
He's trying to pick who he despises most, William or
I think I'll go for Trump on this occasion, actually.
What, you despise Trump?
Good call. Yeah, I think I'll go for Trump.
But he is an enabler, and Trump is going to be the leader of the Western world, and it's really important, important.
Can I just say that? I know you've had
and of course, bad relations between
you've
government...
had your facial hair compared to William. You're not William, because you've got a full thatch up here, and he hasn't. But Trump claims to be 6'1", 6'2". You look at him next to William, who's about my height, about 6 foot. He's not, is he? He must be 5'10". Look at that.
Do you mean that Trump's actually told a lie about something? Come on.
Shrink?
I won't hear it.
To be fair, people do get smaller as they get older.
They do.
So
some of us grow in stature.
And I would also say, having seen Prince William walk past us all when we were at Westminster Abbey on Friday evening, I would say Prince William is well over 6 foot.
Yeah, I think he's very...
I think he's taller than me. I'm 6'2", and he walked. We were standing as he left, and he was definitely looking slightly down.
Yeah, so I think you're rather downplaying the stature of our future king.
Yeah, he always wants to downplay our monarchy.
I've been next to him, and I just thought he was my height.
Did he notice? Did he notice you, Kevin?
That's because you want to see everyone as equals.
Did you notice it?
Oh, that's really nice. Raise some up, pull some down.
Which is a noble aim, but actually denies the facts.
And did you bow to the future king when you were next to him?
Of course I did. Well,
I bet you inclined your head. Look, we must talk about Judy Murray. I'm fascinated by this. Judy Murray gave an interview at the weekend. She's really nailed her colours to the mast. She says that trans athletes should be banned from competing against women, period. She says Judy Murray's argued that trans athletes are bigger, stronger and faster than women and should not be competing in the same competitions. I mean, unambiguous.
And she's pointed out that she feels she's able to say this because she's a little bit older, and that the debate around this is so toxic that actually perhaps younger, influential people cannot speak out.
Yeah, and if you think Martina Navratilova, she's got into this debate. She's had so much flack over it. I think
Sharon Davis.
She's right to say it, and I think she's right. She's right anyway.
Look, I agree.
Otherwise, the trans athlete has an unfair advantage.
I agree with her. It's sometimes the tone the discussion is in, which is so toxic on, excuse me, both sides. Because, look, sex is an advantage. If you're born with that advantage, but it doesn't mean if you're trans you should be discriminated against. In lots of other areas, you should be treated with respect. But as it comes to sport, you just have that advantage of birth, and it's almost we may as well not have men and women's sport. This is the case. But
it seems to be a little bit of a sign of the times in that a couple of years ago, views like that were almost unsayable. People seem to be gathering the confidence to make these claims.
No, I think, Richard, a lot of people said it for a long time. There used to be, and there used to be big,
away from it.
There used to be big rows about it, and then it was how other people would deal with it. And I always think it was the tone the debate was in. Yeah. If it was respectful, and you had some sympathy and understanding for the trans athlete, and I thought it was acceptable, but if you're just screaming at people...
It's just obvious, isn't it? It's just obvious. It's just the trans athlete has an unfair advantage because of the strength, the height, the weight.
Let's just, before we let you go, we've already talked about Prince William and his magnificent beard.
Yes.
Which really suits him, doesn't it?
Really suits him. What about Richard Madeley and his magnificent beard? The editor cannot stand it, but has agreed to a public poll on it. So we are running a poll this morning.
What's it
should Richard Madeley keep his facial hair? You've gained slightly, I have to say. Yes, 32%. But the majority no. So, Kevin...
I'd like him to keep it for another 2 weeks so we can see how it develops.
Exactly.
And then decide now. I think it's a bit rash.
This is 2 weeks' growth, I understand.
Yeah, another 2 weeks.
What's about 10 days, yeah.
Yeah, I actually quite like it.
OK.
If I was Richard, though, I'd be nervous about shaving and trying to keep a straight line.
Well, I shave in the shower, right, and I've got a mirror that I'm pinning up there, so you can see just how far to go, and you can, as it grows, you can feel it, and it stops you going any further, basically.
Too much detail, Richard Madeley's shower, actually. Just thinking, this is too much detail this early in the morning. Richard,
Andrew,
I'm sorry.
should he keep it?
No, has to go, Richard. Much as I love you, has to go.
OK.
You've got a nice face. Why cover it with stubble?
Oh, very nicely styled out.
He's just jealous because you can grow a beard and he can't. You've got beard envy.
I shave every morning.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, OK. Well, I'll go with the flow, and if the vote stays that way, then I'll shave it off before the end of the show.
But
the end of the show?
Well, that's the deal.
Yeah,
I'm going to watch it.
For yourself, man.
Very good.
Yeah. Stay watching. Andrew, Kevin, thanks very much indeed.